Hi guys, welcome to my final winter forecast of 2015 and 2016. It is November 29th, 2015. I apologize for missing my deadline yet again. That's something I would love to improve on, improving my deadline accuracy. But I've finally had the opportunity, to record my winter forecast. So let's get to it. Factors that will affect this forecast. There are many factors this year that will affect the forecast. That's why this year's prediction is much more difficult than last year's or the year before last year's. One of the biggest factors is the strong El Nino, which will be a regular El Nino like the one in 97-98. In December, which will cause warm and wet conditions for the USA, but it will begin to move towards the central region of ENSO, and I believe we'll have a central-based El Nino by maybe the beginning of February or mid-late January, and El Nino weakens by spring. So if you really want to know, I believe we may have an either very weak El Nino or a La Nina or a neutral ENSO next winter. But this winter, strong El Nino to moderate El Nino. A moderate El Nino will be more central based than the strong one. A negative NAO. Right now the NAO is positive, but this winter, especially during maybe February, March, and maybe late January, we will get a negative NAO. Parts of December might have a negative NAO. With a negative NAO, if you want snow, that is probably your best bet for snow. Positive NAO does not help storms come up the coast, and it also doesn't block cold air. So when you have a negative NAO, it's going to be cold and stormy on the East Coast, and when you have a positive NAO, it will not be. Right now it's positive. It will turn negative likely this winter. Likely negative AO is probably more stable because we've had maybe this October we've probably had the most perfect for snow and maybe for the weakening of the polar vortex. So cold air gets let down south. We have a great chance for that, because of all the snow that Siberia, and the amount of snow that it has accumulated recently and very quickly. It's the snow base has expanded rapidly over October, and historically that leads to cold and snowy winters in the central east United States. And the stratospheric warming that provides causes a negative AO, and that also brings cold and stormy weather to the eastern United States. Warm waters in the Gulf of Alaska. Now this has been a predominant pattern for maybe the past 3 winters, I will say. That has it's been a huge factor on winters. One of the reasons it has been is because how warm it makes Western Canada and Alaska, and when warm air gets forced or a ridge gets forced into Western Canada and Alaska, the lower 48, usually more of the east half of the lower 48, gets flooded with cold air. So when you have if these warm waters in the Gulf of Alaska continue to be this warm, we still have a good shot at getting a cold and snowy winter, second half of the winter for the East. We also have a good chance of a positive PDO and positive PNA. The PNA has been around average, but right now it just turned positive, and I think it'll stay positive through the whole winter. PDO, you have a pretty good chance, but it's kind of diminished. It used to be maybe 90% chance of having a positive PDO this winter. Now it's 70%. That's always something to watch, and I may make an update. I may not. I definitely want to, especially because the PDO has has a lot to do with the winter, but I'll hopefully make a update on these sea surface temperature anomalies. A lot of analog years, which I will use. I have a ton of analogs, including 2009, 2010, 97, 98, 82, 83, 02, 03, and 2014 and 2015. So as you can see, there's some very warm and wet winters, and there's some cold and wet winters. None of these winters are dry. That is a hint. So this is the sea surface temperature. As you can see, here it's about average PNA, but now it's become. I haven't updated this map, but now it's become more of a positive PNA. As you can see, the El Nino has spread out more. See, it's the same in the east, it's the same in the west, but as you can see, the Peruvian current is pushing a little bit. I expect to see that more strong through later winter, so we will maybe cool off in the eastern ENSO regions by late winter because of that cold Peruvian current. And you have the warm waters off the coast of the East Atlantic seaboard. What you have when these three combine together is very explosive. A very explosive pattern, and the temperature is very marginal, and it's pretty difficult to get a good cold air mass in, but you do have a lot of the wet storms. So what we need in order to have a ton of snow this winter for the East Coast is a negative NAO. And right now that NAO is positive, which is the reason that the East Coast hasn't got a lot of snow. It's been very, very warm, but the Great Lakes and Midwest have gotten a lot of snow, especially very recently. And that is probably one of the keys to having a snowy, cold winter. Right now, I believe the PNA will be positive, the NAO will be negative for the later half, and the ENSO will stay strong to moderate. Here is the Pluma model ENSO predictions. As you can see, it does weaken as it goes through, and you can see it does have a La Nina here, but you can't really tell this far out. But this is our forecast. As you can see, it's barely as strong, and then as you go into January, February, and March, it's a moderate. So I would watch the strong El Nino turn to a moderate one late this winter. This is the impact that a strong El Nino has. That's not going to be the entire story this winter, although we will have a strong El Nino for a lot of the parts. But as I said, the PNA is positive. So I would watch for that PNA and El Nino pairing, which could make we've had temperature swings and precipitation swings, but I think that the PNA will stay positive this winter, and that will kind of make the effects of the El Nino more marginal. And without an El Nino, this is what you have, just positive PNA. You have the ridge in the west and the trough in the east. And, I mean, it's not as big as a ridge in the west as you think it would be, because it doesn't go that far into maybe the Central Plains. But the trough does stay for the entire 2/3 of the country that aren't under a ridge. So, this is a very good map. I've seen a lot of winter weather forecasters use this map, and this is what happens when you have a positive PNA. So it's a good map to use. As you can see, the NAO is positive, as I said earlier in this video. What am I doing? As you can see, it might reach its peak at the beginning of December, and then it might come down to maybe one above average. But if we get a negative NAO, the figure right here on the right will happen. So you can see Arctic air for the eastern United States blocking for storms to come up the coast. So this is what I was talking about with stratospheric warming and the snowpack on Siberia. you have small snowpack amounts for Friday, October 9th, and then after 20 more days, what is wrong with my keyboard, my god? But after 20 days, you can see almost all of Siberia is under snow cover, and that rapid strengthening in snow cover is what causes some cold winters and some negative AOs. I explained what the negative AO does, but it does let Arctic air come down and pool in the central USA and eastern USA, and you get a much colder air. And Greenland blocking is this, and that's what forces the storms up the coast. This is the polar vortex. When that warms, that's because of a negative AO. So 2 winters ago, we were all about, like, everyone was talking about the polar vortex and how it came down. It never came down. What happened was the polar vortex weakened and warmed, and that let the Arctic air come down into the lower 48, mainly the east coast, and mainly the eastern half of the United States. So when people say that the polar vortex is coming, it's not coming, it's just weakening, and you will get much colder temperatures for the eastern United States. Here's average November temps in the strong El Nino year. Now this is really, really interesting, because as you can see, the temps this year are extremely above average in the east and extremely below average in the west, and that's the opposite in most El Nino in Novembers. And what I realized, which is eerily similar, is that this November 2009, I think a lot of people in the Mid-Atlantic will remember the winter of 2009-2010. That was the year that Washington got the snow, like, I forget what it's called, like the Snowmageddon, or like, I forget what it's called, but that was the year that that Mid-Atlantic got slammed with snowstorms after snowstorm. And as you can see, the temps are very similar. There was record-breaking warmth in the eastern United States that November. So this is my pattern map. I will not have an overall map this year. I decided it's just very difficult to have this whole winter, because it'll have completely 2 different sides to it in one map. So I didn't do that. I did this instead. So we will have, through December through mid-January, it's gonna be warm and dry in the Pacific Northwest. I don't know what to tell you people. It hasn't changed for the past 4 winters, and it's pretty bad. The ski resorts up there, it's not been good. It's really not been good seasons, because you don't have any cold and you don't have any precipitation. This year was probably one of the few chances you'd get for precipitation, but I believe, the storm track will not come up here. It'll stay down here with the Pineapple Express flow that will emerge right about now. It's about to start. But very warm and wet, central through Southern California, basically parts of Arizona, parts of Nevada, and parts of California. You have a storm track, a very common storm track going through. We've already seen a lot of this already, and more of it going up this way than going that way, but we've already gotten major snows in this area, and there's going to be a snow this weekend, not this weekend, but early this week in the upper Midwest. That's due to this kind of storm track, except the track's a little slightly closer. But you have a very active storm track, and you have the subtropical jet. So, very warm and very wet for this area. Average temperatures with storms, because it'll be very warm here and cold and wet due to the El Nino here. So you have average temps with a lot of storms. As I just said, cold and cool and wet. Winter battle zone. This is kind of the winter battle zone, because even though this is where the polar jet stream is, you're still going to see a few more storms. You're going to see a few more mixing storms, especially towards the latter part of this time frame. But you have snow, sleet, ice, rain, freezing rain, and severe weather. I know a lot of those are redundant because basically freezing rain and ice are the same thing, but you get the idea. But over here, I think it's going to be warm and wet. It's going to be warm and wet for the first part of the winter because of the El Nino and the fact that the NAO is still positive. So warm and wet, a couple snows late. Late meaning like maybe early to mid-January, because that's when you start maybe getting the negative NAO, and maybe the temperatures will work with you and you get a few big storms coming up. Because you will get, as you can see with this inland storm track, you're going to get a lot of precipitation. You just don't have the cold air. So if we had the cold air, I would say, well, we would have a big first half of the winter, but we don't really have the cold air in place. That's just my take on it. Here, mountain snows, otherwise warm and wet with many mixed storms. So this is kind of the most, this is kind of the most explosive region on the map right now, because you have relatively warm temperatures, but that the storm track goes through your region, and it goes through your region so many times no matter where it takes on the eastern half of the United States. You know, it sometimes go like this, sometimes it'll go like that, but it'll always go through this area. So I think this is the most wet area for this part of the winter. And as you already see, we've already had a few big storms in the Rockies, and I think that will continue to happen, and maybe we'll get some more out on the plains, as we're starting to have some now. But this is probably the most explosive region. Warm with mixed storms with below average snowfall, winter battle zone. This is another winter battle zone. I mean, obviously you're going to see more mixed storms than this area, and maybe more snows in this area, but it's still going to be below average snowfall, as with these areas. I mean, the southeast could see maybe average to above average snowfall due to the fact that they will actually see snow in the first part of the winter, which they don't normally see. But mainly below average snowfall in just in all of the United States right now. But one exception to that is the Great Plains. As I said, they have a very active storm track going their way. And if you just get cold enough temperatures, you can have a lot of snow maybe this December and early January. That's probably the best time for you guys. No, because the next time frame, the storms are not going to come inland; they're going to stay out, and that's when you're going to get above not just above average temperatures or average temperatures, but it's going to be dry. So this is your good time to get above average snowfall. Here I think you have average snowfall, warm and snowy. The only reason, well, we're going to still see some mixing over here obviously for some of the stuff, but you're going to get some decent snows maybe to the end of this. I think I should touch upon this for a second. The best chance for a white Christmas is probably the Great Plains or the Rockies. That's my white Christmas forecast. But this is the pattern, December through mid-January. Mid-January through March pattern. So not much changes in the west except the storm track does go farther south. You do see warm and dry temperatures in Washington, Oregon, parts of California, Nevada, Utah. Actually, see, it completely changes for the Rockies, as you will now see warm and dry, and you saw warm and wet earlier. Wyoming and Montana. So warm and dry in these areas, and warm and stormy in Southern California, Southern Arizona, and parts of basically southwestern New Mexico. So this is going to be the same. It's going to be the same for the areas that got warm and stormy last time. It's going to be just slightly farther south storm track. Cool with many drenching storms. So you see, you have two storm tracks going through. This is when I think you might start to have to get your. You might start to get the Gulf Mexico storm nor'easter track going. About I think early February is the first big storm for the East Coast. As you can see, you got two pretty wet storm tracks going through this area. So cool with many drenching storms. You could see some mixing maybe at the north of here, but I doubt Florida, parts of Louisiana, and parts of Texas will get any snow. Winter battle zone with many mixed storms, a few all snow storms, and then some all rain storms. So, you know, this is basically, where the storm track tracks, and if the storm track pulls in cold air, if the winds are to the northwest, I mean, if the storm track pulls in cold air, then you have a pretty good chance of seeing a good chance. You have a pretty good chance of seeing a few all snow storms, especially in the central region like Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Missouri. But there'll be a few all snow storms and a few all rain storms. Just they're going to be a lot of different kinds of storms. Although the eastern part, you'll get some near blizzard events alongside with windy mixed storms and rainstorms. So you could, North Carolina, Virginia, and Delaware, and Maryland. I think you could get some all snowstorms that are pretty windy, might even meet blizzard criteria, and you may have a few storms over 6 inches. I think this is probably a very good year for the southeast, or basically the North Carolina, Virginia area. And I think, see, I extended this. I mean, so you could see some pretty heavy snowstorms. Chilly with below average precipitation for the Great Lakes, upper Midwest, Minnesota, parts of Iowa, Chicago, Detroit. So this is what I was talking about. You see here you had above average snowfall. Here you have below average snowfall. So, I mean, your best chance at getting maybe average snowfall is in December through mid-January. And I think you'll be above average for that time frame, but you're going to be way below average here since there are no storm tracks near you. Cold with average precipitation in this, royal blue. That's basically just cold. You're going to get some snowstorms. It's going to be dry sometimes, but it's going to be cold. And the dark blue, cold with multiple major snow events. Basically, right now, the closer you are to the storm track, the more snow you're going to get. So if you're along this line, you're going to get more bigger snow events than if you're out here closer to the royal blue. But this is an interesting area because you have potentials for some big storms, blizzards maybe, but you're also pretty far from the storm track. But this is probably the most explosive area right here. In the purple, you have Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York City, Boston, Bangor, and a few more down east main cities. I should remember because I live in New England, but I don't. And you're going to have a few crippling snow events due to an active storm track and periods of Arctic cold. This is when the negative NAO will play a huge role. And the fact that we turn into a moderate El Nino, because moderate El Nino is a lot like a weak El Nino, except it has maybe more precipitation. So if you know what a weak El Nino is, good for you. If you don't search it up, you'll get a lot of results. But a few crippling storms due to an active storm track and periods of Arctic cold. Okay, these are my pattern maps. I'm going to go to my temperature, precipitation, storm track, and snowfall maps. This has been a long video, and thank you if you haven't turned it off yet. I'm going to finish up quickly. My bad. I just wasted a lot of time, but here we go. Final winter forecast temperature map. So you got well above average temperatures in California, Nevada, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, parts of Montana, parts of Utah, and Arizona. You got above average temperatures for a huge swath of the country. You have from Arizona through parts of Colorado, through parts of Nebraska, through Michigan, and through Minnesota to Washington. You got a lot of above average temperatures this year due to the El Nino. And in the white, we have equal chances. These could go either way, especially in the late winter, because a lot is changing during that time frame. Slightly below average temperatures. Now here it's going to be above average temperatures in the east for December through mid-January. But then mid-January through March, you're going to have below or well below average temperatures. So I think this evens between slightly below average temperatures for these areas. I mean, early winter, I mean, you're going to have cool temperatures here because the El Nino does do that no matter if it's weak or strong. El Nino will bring cool temperatures to the south. But see, that adds to the below average temperatures here. So you have below average temperatures in this royal blue, well below average temperatures in the purple. Here's the my final winter forecast precipitation map. Slightly below average precipitation in the light orange or like tan. That's a lot of the areas because of the unfrequent storm track, you know? This is probably one of the more this map can be pretty tricky to figure out, but also if you know what you're talking about, it's pretty easy to figure it out because you see you have the NAO and you have the negative NAO, you have the NAO storm track, you have the El Nino. So chances are you're going to have a big storm track here. And if you have a negative NAO, the jet streams are going to merge here and maybe bring this extremely above average precipitation up the coast. That's what I have to say. But, I mean, it's pretty easy. Well, it's not easy, but it was about as easy as last year figuring out the precipitation because you just know because of the circumstances that you're going to have this kind of winter. So, find your location. I'm going to move on because there's not a lot of time. Storm track map. You have probably the least frequent of all these. The Alberta Clipper. This comes from Alberta, Canada. And it just tracks through the upper Midwest into like the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley. Just comes out the Mid-Atlantic. So this could be like a quick 3 to 6 inches, you know. But a lot of these will really add your snow total, but we're not going to get a lot of them. Here in the red, Appalachian Runner / Nor'easter, and this is from the Pacific because there is Appalachian Runner from the Atlantic and Nor'easters from the east, from the Atlantic. So these will probably be the most active storm track, especially this because this will happen a lot. In maybe late December, early January. But this will happen more often in January, February, March. This branch of it. So this is a very common one. Panhandle hook. We've got a few of those. We've had a few of those this fall. This November, especially a lot of them. And that brings a lot of snow to these areas. And they've gotten a lot of snow so far, more than average. We have the Appalachian Runner from the Gulf Coast. As you can see, this is actually pretty common. This will be pretty common this year. And you have the Miller Type A / Nor'easter. This is what generates the classic East Coast blizzard because you have very moist conditions here. It strengthens this area, and then it just bombs out, and you get all-out blizzard conditions here. That is if you have cold air. You may not have cold air every time. So just be patient. If you're like sitting mid-January, you haven't gotten 5 inches of snow yet, and you live in the Northeast, it's gonna come. Just when it comes is the difficult part. Final snowfall forecast. The long-awaited snowfall forecast. Okay. You have slightly below average snowfall in the green, which I'm sorry for people who have asking me about Chicago, and I'm sorry about that, but this year is yet again not your year. Because there's not going to be a ton of those storm tracks getting into actual winter, so you're not going to have as much snowfall. Below average snowfall in the yellow, that's just because lack of storm tracks, and the same thing with well below average snowfall. Here equal chances, and here you're not going to have any snow. I doubt you'll have any snow in that area. But in this teal blue, slightly above average snowfall, so that's about 100 to 133% above average snowfall. 100 to 133% of average snowfall above average. So this is probably like about 10 inches above average snowfall. Well, I mean, not here, because that's a ton, but I think since a popular storm track, they're going to be above average snowfalls here, but well above average snowfall in the area that got well above average snowfall in 2009 to 2010. That, yeah, I think is a huge analog winner, and I believe that's going to be pretty similar for snowfall, although storms do hug the coast more than they did 2009, 2010. Thank you. That was my final snowfall forecast. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Feel free to leave any questions in the comments section of this video. Thank you for watching, and bye.